When getting a C-section done, it literally can mean the difference between life and death, especially for your dogs. There's some things you need to be on the lookout for when it comes to inquiring about getting a C-section, right? Not all vets do C-sections the same. There's some things I want you guys to be mindful of, and you guys need to know in order to be educated enough when it comes time to getting a C-section done for your dog, so that your dog's life and the puppies aren't at jeopardy. Stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss this episode of Breeders' Hacks. All right, guys.
I got you right now. What's going on, Bully fam?
People don't realize like how important it is in making sure they vet the person that they're going to get the C-section from, like the vet that they're going to, properly screening who's going to be performing a C-section on your dog. Because literally, like I was saying, it can literally be between like life and death. Because what happens is, I've seen C-sections done from vets that maybe aren't that knowledgeable when it comes to performing a C-section, or they did it because it was an emergency, but they haven't had a lot of experience, whatever the case it may be. Maybe them not being able to properly convey the aftercare to the pet owner. I've seen horror stories where literally a day after getting the C-section, mama's home with the puppies, the person goes and checks on mama. It looks like her guts are just hanging out of her. The staples pop and you see everything coming out from the C-section. It's horrific to see. It's horrific to see. But this does happen. And it's because there's a numerous amount of things. I want to embed these things into your guys' head so that when it comes time for you guys to get a C-section, you won't have so much of a horror story, right? So one of the things being is, obviously, if you're getting into breeding dogs, period, now at this point, even though there's certain breeds that no matter what, you should always get a C-section. As a breeder, no matter what, emergencies can happen. So whether your dogs have puppies naturally or C-section, you should always have a vet on standby that you know can perform a C-section just in case, even in an emergency. Maybe like 2 or 3 vets, to be honest. Personally, me, I have like 2 or 3 vets always on standby that if one can't get me in for a C-section, the other can. And if the other can't get me in, then the other can. So I have a backup and then a backup for my backup. But what happens if it's a holiday? What if it's Christmas or something like that and you need to get a C-section done? I mean, the dog's body isn't going to stop and wait because of the fact that it's Christmas. Having a vet on standby is most important. And you need to start shopping around. You need to find different vets. And you need to talk to breeders who have used the vet before. And honestly, I know this sounds crazy, but like if I'm thinking of going to a new vet for C-section, I'm asking people like, hey, do you have pictures of like how it healed? Or I'm going to go check out the dogs and say, hey, like, can I see the dog's stomach? Like, how did the C-section heal? That's important. I'm down to the point that like, I'm even looking at how big is the incision? You know, an incision that's usually typically smaller is a vet that's usually more experienced, in my opinion, because they don't need to cut as much to get the results they want, which is removing the puppies. And they can do it in a much smaller incision, and a smaller incision also means that there's less weight. Because think about it like this, the dog is standing on all fours. So now when the incision is bigger, there's more weight that's being pressed down on the incision after it's been done, after the C-section has been done. But if it's smaller, then that's actually less of a chance of it reopening. I mean, this also falls on the owners as well, the pet owners as well, of the female, that you need to make sure that your dog isn't doing anything that's going to cause her, say she's outside running around, fighting with other dogs, jumping up and down on stairs, things like that, that's going to cause the incision to pop. And then yet again, it's going to look like guts and stuff is hanging out. But like I was saying, not all C-sections are done the same. And usually like what I'm looking for is good healing, because if it heals properly, if a vet does a very minimal, very small incision and they suture properly, because there's like 3 or 4 layers that they have to suture. Some vets get lazy, and I've learned this by being able to sit in now with one of the vets, and he's an amazing vet, Dr. Carlos over in New Jersey. When you watch, and he explains this, there are vets who literally will just try to suture everything together. That's not the right way to do it. And if you watch how they do C-sections for actual like women, they're suturing each layer. There's like the muscle layer, there's an undercoating layer, then there's the skin, you know, also making sure that the uterus is sutured. So there's like 3 or 4 different sutures that have to be done, stitches that have to be done. What happens is oftentimes people don't realize this, is that when they're not timing their C-sections properly, what winds up happening is the dog starts pushing, she's in labor, you don't know what to do, you freak out because you didn't plan in advance, and now you're rushing to the vet, right? And it's emergency hours. You know who's working on the emergency hours? Usually newer vets. The vets who just got out of school that don't have seniority enough to work the regular day hours. So now you're dealing with a vet that may not have that much experience when it comes to doing C-sections. It's not always this way, but usually, because the vets who are very seasoned and have a lot of experience and have been doing it for quite some time, those are the ones that are usually during the day, that get the normal business hours. Now you're in a situation where this vet may not be as knowledgeable when it comes to performing the C-section, and now you don't have much of a choice. And now you just put literally your dog's life and the puppy's lives in a new vet's hand. How would you feel if you're going onto the operating table and the doctor's telling you, yeah, this is like my third time doing it. You know, I feel confident we'll get through this. Oh my goodness, I'd be crapping myself. Just some things to look for. How big are the incisions? Try to ask for referrals. Try to see if they have pictures of what the incisions have looked like. Try to look at as much as you can. That's really what it comes down to. I'll ask the vet. I'll say, you know, hey, had, you know, dogs pass on you when doing C-sections, things like this. For the surgery, before the C-section, is the time to ask all the questions. As a breeder, you shouldn't be rushing to an emergency vet. You should already have vets that you have properly interviewed to have your business in a situation of an emergency. That's what I've done. That's what I know my mentor has done as well. I don't know if I told you this. Chris literally went to a vet with no dog and he said, I just want to interview you. He paid the $65 just to sit down and get the vet's perspective. It's super important. And actually, here's another thing too, right? I've seen vets use staples. No. Staples, you don't want them just stapling it. They should be suturing, so that it's very less chance of it popping. So I would tell you, make sure to ask the vet before they do the C-section. Take notes. Write this down. Do you stitch the uterus? How many layers do you stitch? Because it should be at least 3 to 4 layers. It shouldn't be one giant stitch. Like I said, there should be like the muscle, there should be the skin underneath, and then there should be the skin on the top, if I remember correctly. Don't quote me on it, but I know there's at least a minimum of 3 layers. And then if you're including the uterus, then I guess that would be the 4th. So you want to find out how many layers are they stitching, right? That's the first question. What type of stitching do they use? Are they stitching? Are they using staples? And then, you know, ask roughly how many C-sections have you guys performed? These are all questions that I would ask going into dealing with a new vet, you know, so I would feel comfortable them, you know, performing the C-section on my dog. And then another thing too that you can ask is, what does the after recovery look like? Do you guys, the proper way, a real vet, what they're taught to do is make sure that mama's with the puppies and they get the first feeding with mama, and the vet is supervising to make sure that she properly came down from the anesthesia and so on and so forth. So like I said, not every C-section is the same. So you want to make sure that you ask the right questions so you don't deal with a C-section horror story. Because I've seen some crazy stuff, some crazy work. And the scary thing about it is, especially with like the scenario I was talking about where you get this like emergency vet that's newer. Remember, you're paying emergency hours. So you would be paying almost 2 to 3 times more for a vet who's seasoned and who's been doing it for a long time. And you just didn't catch them at the right time because you went in for an emergency. So that's where I just say, go back and check out the breeding timing episode that I did, talking about when's the best time to do a C-section, so that then you're not caught having to get one in the middle of the night. But it's, like I said, these are just some of the most important things you need to ask so you can feel confident, because at the end of the day, it's not you getting the surgery, it's your dog. So don't they deserve the best? Anyway, guys, I hope this information is helpful. I hope it's useful. We're here now at the store, so we just want to shoot something while we're in the car. So I'll see you guys on the next episode of Breeders Hacks. Don't forget, make sure to drop a comment down below and let us know your experience when it came to if you've had to get C-sections or whatever the case may be. All right, guys.